Let me start with a question that might make you uncomfortable, because growth always does. If you keep doing what's easy today, what kind of life are you secretly agreeing to live tomorrow? Most people want an easy life, but they keep choosing an easy day. And that right there is the trap. Easy choices today don't give you an easy future. They give you a hard one. Hard choices today, though, those are the down payments on freedom. That's not motivation, that's a law. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Life is already hard. The question isn't whether it will be hard. The question is, which hard are you willing to choose? Discipline is hard. Regret is hard. Learning is hard. Being broke is hard. Working on yourself is hard. Being stuck is hard. So don't ask for an easy life. Ask for the wisdom to choose the right hard. Most people delay pain and then pay interest on it later. Successful people accept pain early and get rewarded with ease later. When you choose to wake up early, study when others sleep, save when others spend, and say no when others say yes, it feels uncomfortable. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is often a sign that you're leaving the old version of yourself behind. Let me say it plainly. Your future is being negotiated by the habits you practice today. You don't drift into success. You slide into mediocrity. Success is intentional. It's scheduled. It's structured. That's why the average person waits for motivation, but the disciplined person builds systems. Motivation is emotional. Systems are profitable. Here's a hook you need to hear. The life you want is on the other side of the work you keep avoiding. The gym you skip, the book you don't read, the skill you refuse to learn, the conversation you're afraid to have, those are not small decisions. Those are votes. And every day you are voting for the life you'll live later. Hard choices now look like saying, I'll do it even when I don't feel like it. They look like investing in yourself when nobody's clapping yet. They look like consistency without applause. But easy life later looks like freedom of time, freedom of money, and freedom of choice. And freedom is expensive, but regret costs more. Most people don't fail because they aim too high. They fail because they aim too low and hit it. They want harvest without planting, rewards without responsibility, success without sacrifice. But the marketplace doesn't pay you for what you want. It pays you for the problems you can solve and the value you can deliver. Life is going to be hard whether you prepare for it or not, and that's the truth most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. The real issue is not hardship itself, but the type of hardship you choose. Every single person will carry weight, but only a few decide which weight is worth carrying. Discipline weighs something, growth weighs something, responsibility weighs something, but regret is heavier than all of them combined, and it never gets lighter with time. Here's a hook most people miss. Pain doesn't disappear when you avoid it, it just changes its address. When you refuse the pain of discipline, you inherit the pain of dysfunction. When you avoid the discomfort of learning, you accept the embarrassment of ignorance. When you dodge the sacrifice required to build something meaningful, you sign up for the stress of depending on circumstances you can't control. You are not escaping pain by choosing comfort. You are postponing it, and postponed pain always comes with interest. Most people want to live a life without pressure, but pressure is what creates power. Diamonds are not formed in comfort. They are formed under pressure. Muscles don't grow through ease. They grow through resistance. Strong character is not developed in convenience. It is built through challenge. The problem is that many people want the reward of strength without the requirement of strain, and life does not work that way. You don't get to negotiate the rules. You only get to decide whether you will work with them or against them. Another truth that needs to be confronted is this: the hard you don't choose will be chosen for you. If you don't choose the hard work of discipline, life will choose the hard life of instability. If you don't choose the hard conversations, life will choose the hard consequences. If you don't choose the hard path of preparation, life will choose the hard lessons of unpreparedness. Avoidance is not a strategy. It is a silent decision that hands control over to circumstances. Let this sink in. Discipline hurts at the beginning, but it heals at the end. Regret feels harmless at the beginning, but it destroys at the end. Discipline says no now so you can say yes later. Regret says yes now and forces you to say no later. Every time you resist temptation, you are strengthening your future self. Every time you give in, you are weakening your options. You are not just making choices, you are shaping the version of yourself that will have to live with them. There is a dangerous lie that comfort whispers, you have time. That lie has delayed more destinies than failure ever has. Time is not your enemy, but it is not your guarantee either. The cost of waiting is invisible in the moment, but devastating in hindsight. What feels like rest can quietly turn into stagnation. What feels like patience can slowly become procrastination. And one day you wake up and realize life didn't suddenly become hard. It became hard because you kept choosing easy. Hard choices build capacity. Capacity creates confidence. Confidence creates freedom. That sequence never changes. When you train yourself to do what is difficult when it matters, life begins to feel lighter. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Strength is not about force. It's about consistency. It's about showing up when no one is watching, committing when quitting feels justified, and choosing long-term gain over short-term relief. Here's the hook that separates the builders from the spectators. The quality of your future is determined by the hard you are willing to embrace today. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Today. Comfort asks, what feels good right now? Discipline asks, what will matter later? One leads to limitation, the other leads to leverage. And in the end, the people who live with the most peace are not the ones who avoided hard choices. They are the ones who mastered them early. Every easy decision you make today is quietly writing a bill that your future self will be forced to pay. Comfort feels free in the moment, but it is never free. It is simply deferred. The problem is not that ease exists. The problem is that ease disguises its cost. It whispers safety while planting seeds of struggle. What feels like relief now often becomes restriction later, and most people don't realize it until the price is already multiplied. Here's a hook that shifts perspective. Ease is not a reward, it is a risk when it is chosen too early. When you choose convenience over commitment, you are not choosing peace, you are choosing pressure in advance. Skipping the work today may feel harmless, but tomorrow it shows up as stress, dependency, and missed opportunity. The future does not punish you for what you didn't do, it simply reflects it back to you. Short-term comfort is attractive because it gives immediate emotional payoff. It feels good to avoid the gym, delay the difficult conversation, postpone the discipline and scroll instead of study. But comfort has a blind spot. It cannot see the future. Discipline can. Discipline understands that the smallest decisions repeated daily become permanent conditions. The difference between people who feel in control of their lives and those who feel trapped is rarely intelligence or luck. It is the pattern of choices they practiced when no one was watching. Easy today often looks like saving energy, but it actually drains momentum. Momentum is built through action, not intention. When you choose the path of least resistance, you weaken your ability to resist when it matters most. Life does not get harder because of one bad decision. It gets harder because of thousands of small, easy ones that slowly erode your standards. And lowered standards always lead to higher stress. Consider this truth. Comfort now trades strength for convenience. You gain temporary relief but lose long-term resilience. When challenges eventually arrive, and they always do, the person who avoided discomfort finds themselves overwhelmed by normal pressure. What once felt manageable now feels unbearable. This is why two people can face the same situation and experience completely different outcomes. One trained through discipline, the other lived through avoidance. Another hook worth holding on to is this: pressure is not the enemy, unpreparedness is. Easy choices today reduce your capacity to handle responsibility tomorrow. When you avoid effort, you shrink your tolerance for challenge. When you avoid structure, chaos grows. When you avoid learning, insecurity increases. None of this happens overnight. It happens quietly, slowly, and consistently, just like success does, but in the opposite direction. People often confuse peace with ease, but they are not the same. True peace comes from competence, not convenience. It comes from knowing you can handle what life brings because you've already handled what you once avoided. Easy decisions feel calm at first, but they eventually create anxiety because deep down you know you are unprepared. Hard decisions create tension at first, but they eventually produce confidence because you know you've earned your strength. There is a hidden tax attached to every shortcut. The shortcut of avoiding discipline taxes your health. The shortcut of avoiding responsibility taxes your finances. The shortcut of avoiding growth taxes your potential. And the most expensive tax of all is the tax on self-respect. Every time you choose what is easy over what is necessary, you teach yourself that your comfort matters more than your future. Over time, that belief becomes a ceiling you struggle to break through. Here is the hook that reframes everything. Your future problems are often the result of your current comfort. The pressure you want to escape later is created by the ease you embrace now. When you accept this, your decision-making changes. You stop asking what feels good and start asking what builds strength. You stop chasing relief and start pursuing results. And when results begin to show up, life feels easier, not because you avoided effort, but because you invested it early. Your future is not waiting for a single big decision. It is being shaped quietly by the habits you repeat every day. What feels small in the moment is powerful over time because consistency always beats intensity. Most people overestimate what they can change in a week and underestimate what they can transform in a year. The life you are moving toward is not a mystery. It is the predictable outcome of the routines you defend and the standards you tolerate. Here's a hook that challenges perspective. You don't wake up one day and accidentally become successful or unsuccessful. You practice your way there. Every habit is a vote, and every day you are voting for the kind of future you will live inside. The alarm you snooze, the book you don't read, the skill you delay learning, the conversation you avoid, none of these decisions feel dramatic, but together they form a direction. And direction, repeated long enough, becomes destiny. Daily habits work because they operate beneath emotion. Motivation rises and falls, but habits run on autopilot. This is why people who rely on motivation struggle with consistency, while people who build systems create results. Habits are powerful because they remove negotiation. When something is non-negotiable, it gets done even on the days you don't like it. Feelings change, systems don't, and the person who wins long term is not the most excited, but the most structured. Another hook worth sitting with is this. Your habits will either protect your future or betray it. There is no neutral ground. The habits you don't intentionally choose will be chosen for you by convenience, environment, and distraction. And convenience never leads to mastery. If you don't control your schedule, something else will. If you don't control your inputs, outside noise will decide what occupies your mind. Habits are not just actions, they are boundaries. Most people think success comes from massive effort, but it actually comes from small actions repeated without drama. 1 hour a day invested in learning compounds into expertise. One disciplined routine practiced daily compounds into confidence. One standard upheld consistently compounds into self-respect. The problem is that results from habits are delayed while the effort is immediate. People quit not because the habit doesn't work, but because the reward doesn't arrive on their timeline. There is a dangerous illusion created by talent and potential. Potential feels good, but it produces nothing without habit. You are not rewarded for what you could do. You are rewarded for what you consistently do. Habits turn potential into performance. Without them, talent becomes frustration. With them, ordinary people produce extraordinary outcomes. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is often not intelligence or opportunity, but repetition. Here's another hook that separates awareness from action. The habits you repeat when no one is watching are the ones that show up when everyone is watching. Discipline practiced in private becomes confidence displayed in public. When pressure hits, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your habits. That's why habits matter more than motivation in critical moments. They decide how you respond when emotions are high and time is short. Your environment plays a larger role in your habits than your willpower. People fail not because they lack discipline, but because they place themselves in environments that reward distraction. The most disciplined people don't rely on strength alone. They design their surroundings to make good habits easier and bad habits harder. Structure beats willpower every time. When the system is right, consistency becomes natural. The most powerful realization is this: your future self is being built daily, whether you are paying attention or not. You are training yourself with every repeated action. Training yourself to focus or to procrastinate, to follow through or to quit, to grow or to stay the same. Habits don't just create results, they create identity. And once something becomes your identity, it no longer feels hard, it feels normal. Discomfort is not a signal that something is wrong. More often, it is proof that something is changing. Growth almost never feels good in the moment because it pulls you away from what is familiar. The human mind is designed to seek safety, not expansion, which is why discomfort triggers resistance. But the very feeling people try to escape is often the indicator that they are stepping into a higher level of capacity. Comfort keeps you stable, but discomfort is what makes you stronger. Here's a hook that reframes the struggle. If it feels uncomfortable, it might be working. Every meaningful upgrade in life begins with a stretch. And stretching never feels natural at first. Muscles resist before they grow. Skills feel awkward before they feel automatic. Confidence feels fragile before it becomes grounded. The awkward phase is not failure, it is training. The problem is that most people quit during this phase because they misinterpret unfamiliarity as inability. Discomfort exposes the gap between who you are and who you are becoming. That gap feels tense because identity is being challenged. When you start doing things your old self wouldn't do, your nervous system reacts. It wants to pull you back into patterns that feel safe. But safety is not the same as progress. What feels safe today may be the very thing limiting you tomorrow. Growth demands that you tolerate temporary instability in exchange for long-term expansion. Another hook worth absorbing is this: comfort is a terrible teacher. Nothing changes when everything feels easy. Easy does not require adaptation, and without adaptation, there is no improvement. Discomfort forces awareness. It forces adjustment. It forces you to develop skills you didn't need before. That is why adversity accelerates growth when comfort delays it. People who grow the most are not the ones who avoid discomfort, but the ones who learn how to move through it. Discomfort also reveals commitment. Anyone can stay consistent when conditions are favorable. Commitment shows up when conditions are challenging. When you continue despite resistance, you send a powerful signal to yourself that you are capable of more. Self-trust is built through follow-through under pressure. Every time you act in spite of discomfort, you expand your confidence, not because the situation got easier, but because you proved you could handle it. There is a difference between pain that damages and pain that develops. Discomfort tied to growth is productive. It has a purpose. It stretches capacity without breaking character. The key is discernment, not avoidance. Too many people confuse challenge with danger and retreat at the very moment momentum is building. Growth requires the ability to stay present when things feel uncertain. Certainty comes later, after the capacity has been built. Another hook that shifts behavior is this: the level of discomfort you can tolerate determines the level of success you can sustain. Bigger goals demand bigger emotional tolerance. Responsibility brings pressure. Leadership brings criticism. Growth brings exposure. If you want a larger life, you must expand your tolerance for discomfort. Trying to eliminate discomfort while pursuing growth is like trying to build muscle without resistance. It contradicts the process. Discomfort is also temporary, but the benefits it produces are lasting. The fear you feel before acting fades once you move. The doubt that feels overwhelming loses power through repetition. What once felt intimidating becomes routine through exposure. This is how confidence is built, not by waiting until fear disappears, but by acting until fear loses authority. Action shrinks fear. Avoidance feeds it. The most overlooked truth is that discomfort is often the doorway to alignment. When you grow, you are leaving behind patterns that no longer fit the person you are becoming. That separation feels uncomfortable because identity is shifting, but staying comfortable in a life that no longer fits is far more damaging than the temporary discomfort of growth. The tension you feel is not a warning to stop. It is often an invitation to step forward. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unreliable. They rise when conditions are favorable and disappear when resistance shows up. That is why waiting to feel motivated is one of the most common ways people sabotage their own progress. The moment effort is required, motivation negotiates. Discipline does not. Discipline moves without permission from emotion. It functions on commitment, not mood, and that is why it produces results. When motivation fades, here's a hook that disrupts. A common belief: motivated people don't win, disciplined people do. Motivation is reactive, discipline is proactive. Motivation waits for inspiration. Discipline creates momentum. When you rely on motivation, your productivity is tied to how you feel. When you rely on discipline, your progress is tied to your standards. Standards are stable. Feelings are not. Discipline works because it removes the daily debate. When something is decided in advance, T no longer drains mental energy. The most effective people don't decide every day whether they will show up. They already decided once. That decision is built into their system. They wake up and execute. This is why discipline is not about force, it is about structure. Structure makes consistency normal instead of heroic. Another hook worth absorbing is this: emotions make great servants but terrible leaders. When emotions lead, Inconsistency follows. When discipline leads, results follow. This doesn't mean ignoring emotions. It means refusing to let them dictate behavior. You can feel tired and still act. You can feel afraid and still move. You can feel unmotivated and still perform. Action does not require enthusiasm. It requires decision. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, but it is actually a form of self-respect. Every time you follow through, you reinforce trust in yourself. Self-trust compounds. When you consistently do what you said you would do, confidence grows naturally. Not the loud kind of confidence that seeks validation, but the quiet kind that comes from reliability. People who trust themselves don't need motivation. They need a plan. Motivation focuses on starting. Discipline focuses on continuing. Starting feels exciting. Continuing feels ordinary. That is where most people quit. Not because the work is impossible, but because the excitement wore off. Discipline carries you through the boring phase, the slow phase, and the invisible phase. Every meaningful result passes through those phases. If you can't operate without excitement, you will always restart instead of finishing. Here's another hook that reframes effort. Discipline is the bridge between goals and results. Goals without discipline are wishes. Discipline turns intention into execution. It creates predictable outcomes because it removes randomness from effort. When you act only when motivated, results are inconsistent. When you act because it is scheduled, results become inevitable. Discipline also protects you from distraction. In a world designed to pull your attention in 1,000 directions, motivation is easily hijacked. Discipline narrows focus. It decides in advance what matters and ignores what doesn't. Focus is not about doing more. It is about eliminating the unnecessary. Discipline gives you the ability to say no to what feels good now in order to say yes to what matters later. Another truth most people overlook is that discipline simplifies life. When your actions are governed by systems, decision fatigue disappears. You don't rely on willpower because willpower gets tired. You rely on routines, and routines run even when energy is low. This is why discipline creates freedom. It frees you from emotional volatility and inconsistent effort. The people who appear unstoppable are not driven by constant motivation. They are anchored by commitment. Commitment outlasts emotion. It stays when progress is slow and feedback is silent. Discipline is simply commitment in action repeated daily. When discipline becomes part of your identity, action feels natural. You don't need to convince yourself. You execute because that's who you are. Freedom is not something you ask for or wait for. It is something you earn through intentional sacrifice. Most people say they want freedom, but what they really want is comfort without cost. True freedom demands payment up front. Time freedom, money freedom, and choice freedom are not gifts handed out randomly. They are rewards given to those willing to delay gratification and carry responsibility when it would be easier to avoid it. Here's a hook that changes how freedom is viewed. Freedom is expensive, but dependency costs more. Every sacrifice you refuse to make today strengthens the change you complain about tomorrow. When you avoid sacrifice, you don't eliminate limitations, you lock them in. Sacrifice is not loss, it is investment. You give up what is easy now to gain what is valuable. Sacrifice often gets framed as punishment, but in reality, it is prioritization. You are not giving something up for nothing. You are trading up. Trading short-term pleasure for long-term leverage. Trading distraction for focus. Trading comfort for capability. The people who live freely later are the ones who accepted restriction early. They understood that boundaries in the beginning create options in the end. Another hook worth holding on to is this: freedom comes from ownership. When you own your time, your skills, and your decisions, freedom follows naturally. Ownership requires sacrifice because it demands responsibility. Responsibility means no one else to blame and no excuses to hide behind. That level of accountability feels heavy at first, but it produces a rare kind of confidence. The confidence that comes from knowing you are in control. Sacrifice builds margin. Margin is what separates survival from choice. Without margin, every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. Every schedule change becomes stress, and every opportunity feels risky. Sacrifice creates margin by strengthening discipline and increasing capacity. When you build margin, life feels lighter, not because problems disappear, but because you are no longer operating at the edge of exhaustion. Many people fear sacrifice because they associate it with deprivation. But sacrifice does not remove joy, it delays it and multiplies it. The joy of freedom is deeper than the pleasure of indulgence because it is earned. It is not fragile. It does not disappear when conditions change. Earned freedom is stable because it is supported by skills, habits, and systems that continue producing value. Here's another hook that exposes a common contradiction. People want the benefits of freedom without the burden of discipline. But discipline is the price tag attached to freedom. Without discipline, freedom becomes chaos. With discipline, freedom becomes choice. The irony is that the more disciplined you become, the more flexible your life gets. Structure creates space. Order creates options. Sacrifice also sharpens focus. When you commit to something meaningful, you naturally eliminate distractions that don't align. You stop wasting energy on things that don't move you forward. This is not loss. It is clarity. Clarity simplifies decisions and accelerates progress. The ability to say no is one of the highest forms of freedom, and it is only possible when your priorities are clear. Another truth that reshapes thinking is this: freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but the ability to choose your responsibilities. When you sacrifice early, you gain the privilege of choosing later. You choose how you spend your time. You choose who you work with. You choose what problems you solve. That level of autonomy is rare because few are willing to pay for it in advance. Sacrifice trains patience, and patience protects freedom. Impulsive decisions create long-term restrictions. Patient decisions create long-term leverage. When you learn to wait, to build, and to compound effort, life stops feeling urgent and starts feeling intentional. Freedom grows quietly through consistency, not dramatically through luck. The most powerful realization is that sacrifice is temporary, but freedom compounds. The effort you invest today continues to pay dividends long after the work is done. Every disciplined choice builds momentum. Every responsible action expands options. Freedom is not found by avoiding sacrifice. It is found by embracing it early and fully. So here's my challenge to you. Stop asking, how can I make this easier? And start asking, who do I need to become to deserve more? Because when you grow, everything around you grows. Make the hard call. Choose discipline over distraction. Choose growth over comfort. Choose long-term freedom over short-term pleasure. Remember this: easy choices create a hard life, but hard choices create an easy life. Decide today which future you. Be willing to earn. Your destiny is not decided by luck. It's decided by choice. And the choice is always yours.